Well, hi, I'm Dave Bragonier, and this is Loose Change. Today, we're talking with Brad Jack. Once again, we've had several interviews with Brad because he's got a very important topic for churches that just is so important today, so needed today. A lot of churches are doing a great job. Other churches need to amp it up a little bit. But we're in the process of sharing his 4 booklets. They're all related to how to have an effective and comprehensive stewardship ministry in your church. So welcome back, Brad. Good to have you. And why don't you first, let's kind of remind us of the other first 3 booklets that we did talk about.
Sure, Dave. It's great to be back. The first book is How to Start the Money Conversation in Your Church. It's kind of like when you buy an electronic device and you get this giant piece of white paper with tiny print, and it's the quick start guide to launch your device. So this first book is literally a quick start guide to talking about money in your church. The second book is How to Connect Stewardship Ministry with people of all financial demographics in your church, because sometimes churches just have maybe a dinner for big givers, and they leave out people in the middle or on the bottom of the conversation. The second book is literally targeting different demographic groups to speak their language, so it becomes a heart conversation and not just, hey, you need to do this and that. And the third book is How to Teach People of All Ages About Money in Your Church. Young adults talk about money different than senior adults. Students talk about money with a different perspective than their parents, middle-aged adults. So really connecting with them where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is all about what this book discusses.
And your ministry is Maximizing Stewardship, and so it's maximizingstewardship.net. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Make sure here. And so they can log on and get these booklets so they can, and pastors and church leaders, whoever sees this need out there and wants to address the need, and that's exactly why you're there in your own ministry. So that's wonderful. Okay, today we're going to address booklet number 4, and the title of that one is How to Establish a Sustainable Culture of Stewardship and Generosity in Your Church. And sustainable is a great word, because you don't want to be a flash in the pan kind of thing. Oh, we need more money. Let's do something. It needs to be an ongoing process. So we've been talking about the different steps of a stewardship ministry in a church. From your experience, how long will it take for a church to establish this ministry and this culture of generosity? Is it a quick fix? Is long-term play? What do you see? How long will it take?
Yeah, as you said, it's not a flash in the pan, one-step tithing accelerator.
Accelerator. That's good.
Yeah, there's a company out there that has something like that. But it's establishing a long-term culture of financial discipleship that leads to generosity is probably a multi-year process. You could do it in a year, but it'll probably take 4 or more years to fully implement, although you could accelerate it a little bit.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about a process this takes. Let's just like in our own personal finances, it's a process. Most people, I don't know about you, Debbie and I might have been an exception. When we really learned about God's principles, we just thought if we're going to jump in, we're going to jump in all the way. So we just went from lackadaisical giving to, we started with 10%. A tithe, which is the minimum the Bible ever talks about. And of course, you want to go on from there. But most people are the same way. They're not going to jump in with 10%. They're going to phase their way up because they have to make changes in their life. And the same way with a church. It's going to take time. and not everybody's going to just jump in right away. So got to allow that time process. Do you agree with that statement, or do you want to edit that statement? What do you think, Brad?
I do agree with that. And, with tithing in Malachi, it says, test me in this and see if I won't pour out such a blessing.
Me too. Test me in this.
Yeah. So did God come through with 1%? Did he come through with 10%? Let's try 3 and 4 and 5, and get up to 10. So step by step is maybe if that's the way you want to try it. And Larry Burkett said something that still sticks with me. He said, try it for a period of time. If you want to do it and your spouse doesn't want to try giving or at 10% or tithe, then agree with me to try it for 6 months. And if we're worse off 6 months from now, we can stop and I won't ask you again.
Yeah, exactly. But I will, two thoughts. One is in Malachi where it says, test me now in this. A lot of people don't realize that's the only place in the Bible God says test it. All other passages have to do with, why are you testing me? Little different tone to it. And so I know for Debbie and I, we just jumped in with 2 feet and never looked back. And is it hard at the beginning? Yes, but you got to test them. And then you got to do your responsibility, which means you got to cut back on other things. And for us, it worked, So, yeah, very, very important. Okay, let's back to the churches and their ministry. Let's get back to that one. Every ministry, sure for yours, just as it was mine, starts with a vision. After assessing and defining the vision, what are kind of the next steps to develop such a ministry project?
After defining a vision, I would say a written vision statement. The next step is to determine the strategy. How are you going to do it? And what's the timeline to accomplish it? You might want to, some leaders say, okay, we're going to push hard for this and get an all-church implementation. Really, I'd recommend doing it little by little. And I'll equate this to similar to adding salt to your food. If you pull the whole salt shaker into your meal, it's going to taste really bad. But if you season it little by little over time, wow, what a difference it'll make. So, a little over time with stewardship ministry, you may want to do an estate planning class for senior adults, or it might look like launching a young adult Bible study group on the Bible and money. So that's the second step after vision. The next one is alignment with leadership. I don't know about your church, but the elder board in some churches I've been in does not like surprises. And they want to know what the pastor is thinking, how soon you intend to start this new thing, and how you plan to make it happen. And there may be discussion about that in the board meeting. But once they've aligned with you in the process, the easy part is the last step, which is implementation. It's simply just following the plan.
Well, I think the key in there is that having those open discussions, just as a husband and wife need to have serious conversations on money, the church leaders need to have that same intensity to make sure they're talking about all the aspects and addressing them. You probably can't do it all at once, but you got to start, like you said, you got to start somewhere and expand from there. Okay, so now we're launching this ministry that we're thinking about and adding all these aspects. Should the congregation be dependent upon the paid staff to do all the work? Or would that just quickly fall apart? I know you mentioned in your book, Romans 12, and serving one another. How does all that play into this facet of creating this ministry?
Yeah, I'm thinking of different churches that I've sat in, and where the pastor preached a great message about doing a certain ministry project, And then I went home and didn't do anything differently, and expected the pastor to come back next week and said, well, I went out and did what I told you that you should be doing. And here's the change I've seen. And here's some people I've led to Christ. They're doing that for, they're there to equip us to do the work of the ministry. And that's in Romans 12. That's why the Lord set up preachers and teachers and those who encourage and those who give practical help. We're urged to be good friends who love deeply, serving everyone with hospitality and humility in Romans 12. And in the same way, the pastor inspires us where we could be in their messages if we follow God's outline for wealth and possessions. And then a teacher comes behind the pastor and shows us how to live out the vision that he presented. Then there are financial coaches that may be part of your team to sit in as needed, one-on-one, to answer questions. And even to coordinate the process in a larger church, you may have somebody you call the church champion, who's probably a volunteer, but they're the go-between the staff and the lay leaders to coordinate what's happening in the effort.
In the area of finances, I just always have seen that it really is a ministry that lay leaders can be a part of. And you don't have to be an expert. I remember the first time I sat down to counsel somebody in finances, I'm thinking, how possibly could I help anybody else in finances? Of course, I had done my studies and, I'd done my prep and stuff. And what I realized right away is, boy, if I do anything about money, I was way ahead of the guy sitting across the table from me. And so it is a ministry lay people can do with lay people, which is so exciting. And yes, you do need those professionals, just as you addressed. There is the time to get the financial planners to give us some of the ABCs of financial planning. Obviously, they can't be in there selling product and those kind of things, but they need to lay out the ABCs so we start to understand those things. But we also got to remember they are only a point of counsel. And you have to remember that, God. We're to seek lots of counsel. You've said that before. And then there's victory in that counsel. But the victory is you knowing and weighing out what's appropriate for you at that time. Okay, as we think about this ministry we're developing within a church, this whole stewardship ministry, are there any written guidelines that maybe we should consider that protects those who serve and those to whom we minister to? We live in a very time of litigation and stuff. So what's your thoughts on that one? What's your guidelines?
Yeah, Dave, that's a great question. I know we talked before about screening potential leaders and volunteers for the team. As you mentioned, so they are in there to build their business, financial business, and they may be well-intentioned, but some of those folks you have to say no to because of that possibility. But I think what you're asking now, Dave, is how do we protect those we serve in one-on-one financial coaching, for instance? So if you're going to sit down with a lady one-on-one, it's better to have another woman serving this person. And if a lady volunteer is not available, you should ask the one requesting financial coaching about bringing a friend who can sit in the meeting with her. You may also want to create written guidelines on where one-on-one ministry can take place, such as not in somebody's home, or specify what a safe meeting place looks like. Also, it's good to set the hours when financial coaching is permitted, where others will be within earshot if assistance is needed. But these guidelines protect not only the one being served, but also the one who is serving.
Well, those are just guidelines you just can't neglect. I know from years ago, even when you came to the class that I taught and we talked about counseling, a man can't go into a counseling room with a woman. Look at around us, all the pastors that have fallen because of that. And they didn't go in the room thinking immorality, but it happens. And so making sure those guidelines are there, that if there isn't a woman, like you mentioned, it'd be great to have a woman on a woman. If you can't do that, then maybe you have to have a financial coach in the room. But if it's a male, there has to be a female, some female sitting right next to him, even if she's not a financial coach. Sometimes they could just be the warm and empathetic factor that needs to be there. Because unfortunately, when it comes to finances, there are some things you got to do or not do, and those become difficult. They become sometimes black and white, with not a lot of waving in and out. You just got to go do this. So those are very, very hard things. So I think and I think a lot of churches today understand all that more so. I will say it in the past, because you're not going to put Sunday school teachers in a room without your checks and balances today. So hopefully that's just in place. And of course, you're addressing it in this booklet that we're talking about. So, okay, so let's we got this ministry going. You and I just kind of addressed jumping into the counseling room, but let's go to the other end of it with those other facets of stewardship ministry. Some larger churches, usually it's larger churches, they actively promote estate planning, which can include, and hopefully will include, kind of receiving a bequest from a family. I don't know. I hope that within your reasoning, you're maybe leaving money to your church. I know that's addressed by many people, but so large churches address that. What do smaller churches do? What can they do to address that whole issue?
That's a great question. Several denominations offer estate planning services for church members who wish to give to a ministry connected with their denomination. Regional denomination offices normally have the needed contact information to get this started in smaller church. For churches that don't have a denominational legacy office, we offer a 4-part estate planning course that anyone can teach. We have PowerPoints and a talking guide, and it covers estate planning terminology, caring for elderly parents, providing for your own family, and being generous to the kingdom on your passing. But then it would be up to each family to seek out a board-certified attorney to prepare their documents. And you can find that course on our website under resources at maximizingstewardship.net.
That's great. I'm glad you have that process in there for those churches that don't have that system in place via denomination impact. Okay, so now we're addressing the bigger picture of stewardship within a church. And obviously, every year the church or a ministry, I have to do the same thing. You have to send out a giving statement to donors that give during the year and give above a certain amount. What other points of opportunity to say thanks are there out there that the church can use to promote that whole process and other ministry organizations? Again, we're talking about how do we say thanks?
Yeah, I want to take a sidetrack just for a minute and point to a teenager in youth ministry, and the youth leader at the front is saying, "Who wants to go on a mission trip this summer?" And 2/3 of the kids raise their hand and jump up and down. They're excited, but there's one kid in the back that the youth leader never calls on, and he's back there, holding his hand up and kind of excited, but he never gets recognized. And so how does that make him feel? Because he doesn't get recognized. He wants to be part of the team. In the same way, in giving, what if somebody begins giving to a church in February, and each month they gave that they received an electronic notice from the company that handled the gift, And the following January, during announcements, they were directed to download their giving statement from the website at their church. And that may have been the easiest way to provide a giving receipt, but I don't think it's the best way. And it's the same tied back to that kid on the back row in the youth ministries. Nobody recognized him for wanted to be part of the team. Also, behind every gift, there's a person, and behind every person, there's a story of why they are giving. We strongly recommend taking 1 minute, just 1 minute, to write a handwritten note that says, "The financial secretary let me know you've joined our giving team. We're grateful for your support. Please let us know how we can serve you better. Love, Pastor Joe." And in this case, Pastor Joe is someone that would be recognized from the platform frequently. Pastor Joe doesn't know how much they're giving, but it only takes him 1 minute to write the note. But that note can influence whether that family will continue to give or not give because they were recognized.
Great advice. Great advice. On when we think of giving and generosity and money, and I know I've had conversations even with my pastor, but usually the last thing to join a church is somebody's giving. It's also the first thing to go when they're exiting out the back door. Okay. What's your thoughts on recognizing first-time givers and the reality of the other side of the statement?
Well, there are several organizations that help churches monitor giving levels, and they all say that ignoring a new giver is a great way to get them to stop giving. These organizations will help the financial secretary identify new givers in order to just recognize them. Well, on the other end, when a family stops giving, there may be a reason. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they had a significant illness in their family, or maybe they moved away. In a large church, maybe they have even passed away without someone noticing they're missing. If you have a method to monitor decreased or paused giving, make this an opportunity for a pastor to reach out. Now, don't say, "Hey, we've noticed you've stopped giving. What's up with you?" Instead,
that doesn't work real well, huh?
Just let them know, give them a phone call, let them know you're on their mind, and that you're just calling to check in with them. This is literally a ministry touch point opportunity and not a financial questioning session.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, again, here it's communication and communicating with your congregation, whether it's across from the pulpit or individually, and what's going on in their life. Like you said, it could be something totally behind the scenes that nobody in the church knows because they haven't shared it yet. And it really needs to be addressed because it may be a deep hurt or a deep issue that they're having to address during that time period. Okay, so then again, thinking of the bigger picture of church ministry, stewardship ministry within the church. And there's always going to be those people who said that they attend a church, a particular church, but they don't trust how leadership is handling the finances. And thus, their heart's not fully committed to their church financially. How can church leaders do a better job in demonstrating that they're faithfully handling all the money that comes in and that it's being distributed to where it's supposed to go?
Dave, I have 3 thoughts on that. First, every church financial committee chairman needs to read the book Integrity at Stake, Safeguarding Your Church from Financial Fraud by Raleigh Demos. Raleigh is a church embezzlement investigator, and he knows his stuff really good. Secondly, show testimonials of what your church is doing over the course of the year during the giving moment. You can inspire confidence in the congregation that your church is on mission when you show these testimonials. And third, make it easier for congregants to find your annual financial report. You may wish to show budget categories by percentage rather than dollar amounts, and it's especially significant when talking about staff salaries. So as an example, you may want to just keep it simple and say our building and property, plant, and equipment, so to speak, represents 35% of the budget. Staff salaries represents another 35%, and ministry operations represent the final 30%. But for that one individual who may want to come in and see the line item budget, have them schedule an appointment with the finance director or the senior pastor in a small church, and then those individuals can decide how much they want to disclose.
And that's why it's so important for the whole leadership to be in sync with each other for when those kind of issues come up, because there are always going to be some people who think, whatever the thought is, we're spending too much on this. They earn too much money and those kind of things, and just so they're all in sync with one another. Good advice. Good advice. Okay, so if we're talking about kind of topic of giving, there's other ways to give. Most churches today probably know how to accept gifts of stock or mutual funds. What about a donor who wants to give appreciated property, like a business asset or real estate? What is often some of the most effective ways to do that?
One that comes to mind, Dave, is National Christian Foundation. Although there is a cost involved, they can handle all the legal details of transferring non-cash assets or property or real estate to a donor-advised fund where the donor can then direct where the money is given. This can save significant capital gains taxes for the giver if highly appreciated assets are donated before selling them and then giving the remaining proceeds as opposed to selling something and giving the proceeds. And something else while we're talking about giving appreciated assets, I remember the story of one church who gladly accepted some property, and then they found out there was an income tax lien on the property. This was after they did the details of transferring it into the church's name. And fortunately, the way that church got out of that lien to the IRS was an oil man came and said, I think there's oil underneath your property. And so here, sign this lease document. We'll give you a bonus to, allow us to drill. And the church showed that to the IRS, and the IRS said, well, we'll just take that property and any income that comes from it, and we'll call it even. And as it turns out, the oil well was a dry hole, but it got the church out of the deal. So one thing to consider is always do your due diligence before you accept the gift of appreciated property.
Now, for our listeners, I'm cracking up because just so everybody knows, Brad lives in Texas, so there might be oil under their property. I live in California. There's no known oil under my property. I don't even own any property, but little different circumstances. But that's great. But the key is, are we doing our due diligence before we even receive the gift? And is it a viable gift for the church? We're never doubting the intent of the gift, but you got to do your homework in the process. Good counsel. Good counsel. All right. If we get back to the topic of teaching people how to handle money God's way, are there effective ways to teach everyone in your church? Again, you hit on different things. We want to make sure we're addressing all the different scenarios that can be within a church. As we all know, not everyone wants to join a group or take a class that the church may be offering. What are some other considerations when selecting curriculum?
I can think of 2 or 3 different curriculums that require 2 hours a week for 6 weeks or 10 weeks. And in those particular instances, when they've run those classes over time or groups over time, maybe at maximum 15% of their church populations have ever taken the classes because they don't want to commit to all that time. So it's important to consider your church culture. Do you have Sunday school? Do you primarily use small groups for discipleship? Or perhaps your building space is limited and you prefer to offer an occasional Saturday seminar. How long do you want a class to last? Will it fit into the time you normally allot with childcare? Does your church culture encourage take-home Bible study work between sessions? Or do you normally ask them to come and listen to somebody speak each week? So at maximizingstewardship.net, in our resource section, we have a document called Curriculum for Groups and Classes with a number of selections from different publishers to help you find a good fit for the right curriculum in your church.
What I love is that churches don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of helpful tools out there, and your whole ministry is trying to funnel those resources together so a church knows how to turn left or how to turn right or how to address this or how to address that. That's great. Because it is a subject that is covered more broadly today than in years past. When you and I first started, there weren't a lot of authors out there addressing money issues. Of course, we both came under the tutorage of Larry Burkett, and he's kind of the grandfather of stewardship ministry in the churches. But a lot of good stuff out there today. So, but we need. I think what you're saying is the leadership of the church, and you got to find some people to pick up the torch and carry the torch. And then how do we successfully fulfill a ministry to everybody? Okay, so along the same line, you kind of addressed classes and what ages to hit. How about times? Best times of the year to do certain financial topics. One example might be college students. You're probably only going to catch them when they're there for the summer because they may be gone for the rest of the year at school. Are there best times? What you're thinking on that one?
Yeah, Dave, what I hear you saying is, when are the teaching opportunities for different segments of the congregation? One I can think of right off the top of my head is about the time Christmas debts are coming due at the end of January. It's a great opportunity to offer a class on understanding your credit report and creating a debt snowball strategy. But this is also a chance to tease them about a more in-depth Bible study you may roll out in February. In March, young couples may want to know how to purchase their first home, because springtime is kind of the house buying season. But this is an opportunity to introduce them to a Bible study that could equip them to succeed over their lifetimes. In April, how about a seminar on how to save on the future power of compounding over time and adjust their tax withholding, April taxes, to maximizing their monthly savings. And Dave, you mentioned teaching college students in the summer. And then in the fall, middle-aged families are starting to think about sending their kids to college. This sounds like an opportunity to present possible strategies for their kids to graduate from university completely debt-free. And I know a lot of those couples are still paying off their college debts. And then finally in October, senior adults want to know how to choose the right Medicare supplement plan for the upcoming year. But what an opportunity, while you're helping them with that, to entice them with an estate planning class.
Good. You got to think your way through the system. College debt. For those listening, we have done an interview with Russ Stevens on say no to college debt, and that's his whole ministry, is trying to help that process of helping kids come out of college with not a lot of debt. And so you can go back and look at prior ones where we address that. Where we address that. young couples, they're going to want to know about paying off student loans, or maybe how to buy their first house. Large churches may have enough similar interests to do a class on that. How can smaller churches serve that group of people that are very specific in what they need?
Yeah, it's a challenge for smaller churches to offer one-off classes when only one person in the congregation of 75 asks the question. So really, I think it's a good idea to have in your back pocket some thoughts on where there's some sound financial advice that goes along with Scripture. There are a couple of secular sites that I like, NerdWallet and Clark.com. But then there are articles from Ramsey Solutions, Dave Ramsey, or The Bible on Money from compass1.org is a great all 2,350 verses in Scripture arranged by topic. And then faithby.com offers free articles and podcasts. And one of my favorite Christian investing places to go when I have an investment question is Sound Mind Investing, with a number of biblically based investment articles.
Great book, Sound Mind Investing, yeah.
So what's the reason for including Scripture in every lesson? First of all, I'm thankful to the Lord for the instructions He gave us about handling wealth and possessions. His advice is literally out of this world, as it says in Isaiah 55. Bible-based advice works best during good times, and it also works best during hard times. It works in every culture throughout the world. Why use Scripture? Because God's Word changes hearts. When you've got somebody's heart, you've got the whole person. And I believe God is in the heart-changing business.
Absolutely. We're of like minds, and though both of our ministries center on money, it's really not about money. It's about giving your heart to Christ and then following His word and what He says about the money. Not just that He's the owner, but He just gives us principles for every day of our money. He's not going to answer every question, but the principle is going to be there, whether to turn left or to turn right. And it all stems with the idea of living within our means, keeping debt to a minimum or none, and being generous. And that's what your ministry is all about, is the generosity that God wants us to have and to impact the world. My byline for Barnabas Financial Ministry is bringing up people and resources to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. That's what it's all about, getting the gospel to the ends of the earth. Because we're not taking any of this money with us. We know biblically, if we're good stewards, we're probably sending some good stuff on in front of us in terms of blessings. And we also know from Paul, we already have those spiritual blessings in the heavenlies. So it's all exciting. All right. Anything else you want to say, Brad, before we wrap it up here? And we can have you on another time. But any last words you want to impart to the troops?
What is a good word? I'm thinking of a verse that Larry Burkett used to quote fairly often. It was Proverbs chapter 10, verse 22. It says, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth, and He adds no trouble or sorrow to it."
Isn't that just sums it up? It's the blessing of the Lord to make us rich. And that doesn't have to be money.
That's right.
Brad, it's been wonderful just to have you on this program. We look forward to having you again. Tell the people how they can reach you one more time.
Sure. Most of our resources are at maximizingstewardship.net, or you can go to Amazon and find our books, in English and Spanish, both paperback and Kindle, under the Maximizing Stewardship series. There are 4 books.
That's great. And I hope the listeners will follow through on that and take advantage of, how God's leading you in your life just to helping them and churches create a sustainable and vibrant ministry of stewardship and generosity in their churches. That's wonderful. Well, again, we encourage everybody to hit the like button on your computer there and to subscribe to this broadcast, as well as to share it with others. And we look forward to how God will work in each of your lives as you love him, follow him, and be obedient to his principles. All right. Have a great day, everybody. And Brad, again, wonderful to have you on. God bless you.
Thank you, Dave.